Well, hello everyone, good afternoon, thanks for coming. My name is Maximiliane, and today we're going to talk a little bit about DevSecOps. So I work at a company called MGM Security Partners, and I work there as a security consultant, which means that me and my team, we do help software teams, developer teams, companies to introduce security for their projects, for their applications, and support them in terms of finding the right measures and also conducting these measures in the project lifecycle. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a bit about the concept of DevSecOps, which means security in the DevOps world, and how practical it really is. So I want to talk a bit about the experience that I had as a security consultant in one specific project that we conducted together with our mother company, MGM Technology Partners, which is a huge software house building software for customers. And I want to give you a little bit of an overview about things that we encountered during our work in this project, some lessons learned that if we had known those earlier, maybe some things would have went smoother, and some best practices for everyone thinking about implementing security into their DevOps team as well. So what I want to start with is a definition of DevSecOps, because not many like the term, and it sometimes is misused. Because if you read it, DevSecOps, then it seems like you're just introducing another team into the DevOps culture. So like a dev team, an ops team, and a security team, which means someone else might be responsible for your security, which this definitely is not. So I stole this definition here from Red Hat because I like it very much, and I think it says exactly what I understand and my team understands with the term of DevSecOps, which means that in the collaborative framework of DevOps, security is a shared responsibility, which is important, integrated from end to end. And it's not so much an integration of a team, but it is a mindset that it is so important that now we have this term for it, DevSecOps, in lack of another term. And this is to emphasize the need to build a security foundation into the DevOps initiatives. So we have to keep that in mind. DevSecOps should not mean we are integrating another team, but we're integrating security as a whole, as a natural thinking into agile projects. So a little bit about myself. I already told you I'm working as a security consultant. My background is as a penetration tester, so I'm not a developer, but we have a lot of experience with software development with our mother company, MGM Technology Partners. So in the talk, you will sometimes see this nice little guy, which is not so much a representation of myself, but as security in the team. So you will see her a lot of times, and she represents security as a whole. So for you as background. So, okay, before we start with the actual lessons learned and the actual best practices, I want to start a little bit with the basics. Because, context is important, settings are important, so I want to tell you a bit about the project that I was working on now and that I want to share, and a little bit about our approach on how to integrate security into an agile project, so that you can have all the facts before we come to the lessons learned. So what are we doing in our project? what we do is we work for an insurance company, a big insurance company here in Germany. And what insurance companies do is they sell insurances. Quite clear, I think. But they don't do this themselves sometimes. They have brokers for that. And those brokers, they talk to the customers and sell them insurances in the name of the insurer. And this process for this company, it has been a manual one. It has been a little bit old-fashioned. They were sending emails. They were talking a lot on the telephone. And so this insurance company wanted us to digitalize this process here. And so what our team does and has done is we built 2 web applications, basically. The one web application is a point of sale, a sales platform where the brokers can log into and create offers for the insurances for the customers and send it to them, and the customers then sign those. And then these signed offers are sent to the back office. The back office is another web application based on our MGM Cosmo standard product that we use in our mother company. And there the insurer can log in. He sees the offer request, and then he creates an insurance policy, and this policy then is sent back to the sales platform where the broker can get it and give it to the customer. So this is a bit of a very simplified view here. In fact, it's a lot more complicated, but this is enough to understand what we built. So basically 2 different web applications. And here, for your information, a little bit about the technology stack that we're using. Most of the backends are in Java. The front ends are Angular, and then we changed over to React. For the front end. We also did not start the front end from scratch. As I said, the back end, the back end portal, it is on the MGM Cosmo product. So for the front end, we use also an MGM product, which is the A12 framework, which is basically something that helps us create software, form-based software without having to write all the code from scratch. So this is what we used for the front end. We host a lot of the applications ourselves, but some parts are also hosted on AWS, and we use Docker and Kubernetes for orchestration, and Jenkins as our CI/CD tool. So this is just for your information, our technological background here in this project. And now a few words about how we went on to introduce security in this kind of project. So what we basically do when we get into a project and they say they want to have security, and they're agile and they're a DevOps team, and what should they do? Then what we take is our what we call lean application security concept, which means we don't want to integrate security, all the security measures there are on the planet in this project, but we want to find the most efficient, the most tailored way to have security measures in integrated. So this is something we were developing at that time. We started out quite early. When we started out with this project, this was not as detailed as it is now, our approach, but this is basically what we did. So we want to have security in all parts, in development, in operations, in all phases of the project, and we want to have the right measures for each project. This is the mindset we went with which we went to the project. So some background, the project started in 2016, so now 3 years ago, and is still ongoing. We're doing Agile Development, of course, but it is no real Scrum. It is something you will hear a lot. People say, yeah, we do Scrum, but not real Scrum, so we have some of the meetings, but not all of the roles, and yeah, you hear that a lot, I think. So this is what we're doing. Most of the team was initially in Hamburg. So the developers, the operations guys, everyone was in Hamburg. Security was in Munich. So that was me. So we had to work with a distributed team quite from the beginning. And in terms of budget, we were also quite limited. So we only had 1/5 of a full-time equivalent, which means I was allowed to spend 8 hours a week on this project, which is not very much. And so we had to come up with solutions for integrating security with this little of a budget that we had. And it was, at least in our company, the pilot project for our lean application security approach. So we were trying out a few things here, and this is where these lessons learned mostly come from. So what happens when you take an external expert like we did and put this expert into a team, a software development team, and have them do security? This is what happens most of the time. So the expert, the external expert, will always be the odd one out here in the team. So in this case, this was me. I was the garlic in the orange, basically. So we wanted to counteract this effect of having the external party not being accepted in the project, as they are not a full team member, because with 1/5 of a full-time equivalent, I could not be a full team member of the team. So what we did was we created another approach. We chose to have a security responsible in the team, was someone who is completely part of the team, who is fully integrated, and who is responsible, as the name says, for security. And this person then works together with the external security expert, and so raises acceptance in the team as they work together as a whole. And we had the experience that developers, operations guys, everyone is more likely to accept measures when they come from this pair and not only from an external expert. So we used this approach in this project as well. And in this case, you can always have discussions. Who would be the perfect fit for such a security responsible role? There are a lot of different options. Some would suggest you take the one who is most passionate about security, who knows most about security in the team, maybe some developer. But if you say that might be a junior developer just currently starting out, then it might be a hard place for this person in the team being the security responsible, because he might have to talk to software architects with a lot of experience and tell them that they have to integrate security. Or maybe that one of their approaches might not be the most secure one. So this might not be the best choice for a security responsible in the project. In this case, I was really lucky, because we chose the technical project manager as the security responsible. So he was already the most senior guy in the project, and we were able to do a lot of work as a team here and have the whole team on our side with that. So that was good in this. But we also had other projects with other roles, with other people having the security responsible role. But here it was the technical project manager. Okay, so much for the background. Now you have a context and the setting of what we tried to achieve, of what is our product, and so let's start at the beginning. At the beginning, you all know when a project finds itself, when you start out, there is a lot of communication work. There's a lot of setting up processes. There is a lot of communicating with the customer. There is a lot of team setup, team finding. What tools do you use? What programming language, etc. There is a lot of initial stuff to do, and the same goes, of course, for security. So we as a security team had a lot of work to do, a lot of communication work with the customer, which maybe is obvious, but also internally, which might not be as obvious. I will come to that in a second. So first with the customer. Our customer was very security aware, so they already had they had some ideas on how to do, for example, a risk analysis. They had some compliance rules, etc. And basically, they sent us over a lot of forms, a lot of Excel sheets that we had to fill out with our data sensitivity and our risk ratings in terms of availability, etc. So there was a lot of documentation work to do, and we sent this risk analysis back to them. And then they came back with a lot of requirements, a huge requirement catalog based on our risk assessment. So we had to go through this requirement catalog and see which of these measures are actually ones that we can do in our project and which of the ones we cannot do. Maybe because they are technologically not possible, they are not feasible for our project, etc. So it was a lot of paperwork going through all this at the beginning. With our internally with MDM, this was quite another case because, as I told you, we were not starting from scratch. We were using some frameworks, some products that are internally designed. So what we had to do is we had to set up communication processes with these other teams, not only in terms of we want a new feature or something like that, but also in terms of security. What happens if we find a bug? What happens if we find a security vulnerability? Will it be fixed? When will it be fixed? When will we get a patch for that? How long will it take? And in what way are we communicating this? So this is also something that we had to set up, that we had to agree upon, and this was also not very easy. So This communication at the beginning with the customer and with MDM leads me to my first lessons learned that I will share with you, that security must be involved in the process as early as possible. Now you might say, duh, I already heard that. That is obvious. But mostly you've heard that, I think, because of the monetary reasons. I think this graph is something that everyone has already seen before. I at least hope so. It is from 1996, and it is still valid today. It shows that the earlier you find and fix security bugs in your project, the more costs you will save in comparison to when you fix them very late in your project life cycle. And this is basically what this graph is saying. So in terms of monetary reason, of cost reasons, it is very important to introduce security very early so that you will not have to make big decisions late in your project stages. But what I actually mean here is not only the monetary aspect, but also the aspect of communication and processes. If I and we as a security team were not there in this beginning of the project phase, if we could not have done the risk analysis together, if we were not would have not have been able to set up the processes with the internal teams, then this would have come back to haunt us later on in the process. A lot. So we often looked back and said how thankful we were that we were together in these first stages of the project. And it is a common mistake to think, yeah, well, we have not written one line of code yet. Let's not involve security now. We can do that later. But this will come back to haunt you, definitely. So introduce security as early as possible, especially in more complex projects. The next lessons learned is that third-party frameworks, and you might substitute framework here for everything else, plugins, code snippets, whatever, they lead to faster features. You can have results, you can have prototypes, you can have running applications much easier, much more early, but they are also might introduce a painfully slow process in fixing and releasing bugs and security issues, which might become a problem to you. So, as I said, we were using a lot of not third-party, but in our company, but they were for us third-party frameworks, which meant that if we found something there, we would know that we could not fix them right now. We had to wait for them to release a patch, and this is something you have to keep in mind when you do the architecture of your project. Keep in mind that if you find something in these aspects not controlled by you, that it might not be as easy to fix them as you expected in the beginning. So yeah, just have this in the back of your head when you decide upon how to build your application. We definitely thought about that later on and said, yeah, well, maybe one or two less frameworks would have been good. So, we started out with our risk analysis, with the compliance lists. We set up processes. We did all these initial stuff, and we thought we were on a good way. The project started, and then we really quickly came to the question: should we write that down? There is this myth that in agile projects there is no documentation. You all hopefully know that this is not true. There must always be documentation, otherwise projects will result in chaos. And we decided that this must also be the case for security. So what we did was we set up a security documentation. We, from the start, documented all the processes. We documented our risk analysis. We documented the measures that we've taken. We also documented the measures that we have not taken, which was really important. That resulted in some kind of gap list where we could actually see and what steps we have not taken yet and why we have not taken these steps yet. There might have been good reasons for this. And we could share this documentation to all stakeholders. And we had a lot of stakeholders, and they all were very happy about this. So they always had this up-to-date security documentation, and they were a lot more forgiving about not implemented features than they would have been if we would just have told them that. So this was a really good decision to introduce that really early, but also here we made some mistakes. We did not take this documentation part seriously enough. So at first we started out that only we as a security team wrote the documentation, and the documentation was a Word file, which is very old school, I know, but at that time we thought, yeah, maybe let's just keep it simple, keep it in a Word document. That will be all right. We really soon discovered it is not all right. This is not collaborative, and we really soon were out of date with our documentation. Because we as a security team, and I always talk about we, but we were just two people, so me and the representative. Really soon when the project got bigger, we were not able anymore to keep this documentation up to date. There were a lot of figures in it, things about the environment, etc. We were not able anymore to always keep this close to the real world. So what we did was we changed the documentation format. We put it into our Confluence system, so we made it collaborative. Everyone could see the documentation, and everyone could actually work with us on the documentation, which highly increased the quality. And we, of course, we introduced the whole team, so everyone was able to do the documentation with us, and not only we were responsible. So this was also a very good decision. So. Next lessons learned would be that a collaborative documentation is vital for survival of security in a project. I say this so strongly because for us in our project it really was, because our stakeholders, they were really laying a lot of importance on this documentation in the end. So if we would not have had it, then we would have run into problems. So for some projects it might not be as important, it might not be as vital, but it still must be an integrational part, because only in this way you can keep track about everything that you've done, because there will be the time when you look back and say, what did we do a year ago? And you will not know it anymore. So you can just look into your documentation. Okay, so we went on with developing, we went on with our project, and there really quickly came the first critical features that we implemented. And one example of these features is multitenancy. So we have these brokers, right, that use the sales platform, and this is the easiest example. There is one broker, he's selling one insurance product, and he has access to exactly this. Then there will be a second product, let's say one insurance for cars and one for houses, so he has access to this product as well and can create offers for that. Then there is the broker B, who can only sell insurances for houses, not for cars. So he has only access to the second product, but not the first. He cannot create offers for this, and he cannot see the offers that are created in this product. But of course, it is not only offers that are in here, but there are also policies, like the finished insurance products. So there is also a difference. Can a broker see the offers and the policies? Can they only see the policy? Can they only see the offer, and for which product? So it becomes more complicated. And the last step that we have is that these brokers are from different companies. So they might be able to see the same products, but they cannot see and manage the offers and policy from the other company. That would not be good. So basically, this leads to a very complicated access control that we have here in this project, which leads to tables like this, which are kind of three-dimensional, where we have role, function, and tenant, which means company. As you can imagine, testing this is a lot of fun. But it is also important in a security way. So we said, okay, from a security perspective, we definitely have to test this. So how did we go on to test this? We did a penetration test, because this is the first thing that sprang to mind. We can access control can be very easily tested with a penetration test. So that's what we did. We did a penetration test on the sales platform, and we thought it is manageable. It is okay. We can keep that up. But we did not only have one sales platform. Very quickly, there was the second sales platform for a different market with different configurations. And we still said, okay, it's getting harder, but we can do it. We can do penetration testing. It's okay. But it did not stay that way, of course. So now we have a lot of sales platforms with a lot of configuration, and we have a very agile development. So features come in way more quickly than we could ever pen test them manually, especially not with our budget, which you have to keep in mind, only 8 hours a week. So we quickly realized manual penetration testing is not the way to go here. But what we had at that time was a really good QA department, testing department, and they were just building up automated tests, end-to-end tests for exactly these functionalities. So what we did was we sat together with this team, and we said to them, let's integrate the security test into your test suites. They used the JEP framework for this, based on Ruby, which is a really good framework for automated testing, and we just managed to integrate our access control tests into the QA test suite. So functional tests and security tests side by side, and of course automated. And this was a real deal breaker here. That was really good for finding vulnerabilities here. We saw that very quickly, that when we run the first automated tests, we saw a lot of things that we did not see in the manual penetration testing because it was just too much. So really good here. So the next lessons learned, and this is something that you have heard before the last days here now, and that should be really clear, is that the basis for scalable security verification in an agile process must be automation. manual testing, manual verification will not scale at all, and it must always be tried to automate your security tests in your projects. This is vital, and we realized that quite early, and we realized that, of course, not only in this project but also in other projects that we consulted. So what we developed was our principle that we call Atlas, which means we do all of the security testing automated, and we do it for each project. This is our principle. So we try to have pipeline integration of all tools that to have it all covered automatedly in the projects, and that is not only the authorization tests here, which I just talked about, but also DUST and ZUST, which is dynamic application security testing and static application security testing, like source code analysis, but also runtime analysis and dependency analysis. And all of this we want to have integrated, and we want to work with the results in an automated way. There are some examples of tools that we integrate into the build pipelines, and we also did this for this project. Who of you knows the OWASP dependency checker? Oh, yeah, a few. That's good. That's great. So you might have run into the same problems as we did. So we, of course, wanted to integrate it. The OWASP dependency checker is a tool that checks your dependencies that you use in your application against a database of commonly known vulnerabilities, and tells you if the libraries, the frameworks, etc. that you use, the dependencies, if they contain known vulnerabilities and maybe should be updated. So this is vital information. So what we did was we integrated this tool in our build pipeline. And of course, it broke the build. That is clear. It always happens with the dependency checker with the first run. So when you let the dependency checker run, you get a result that looks like this. You get a report. It's really pretty. It tells you there are a lot of findings and in which libraries they are. They also tell you the packet, but that's it. And now there is this big question: what to do with these results? Is it really breaking the build? Are these vulnerabilities really ones that do concern us, or are they maybe in parts of the dependencies that we're not even using? So we had these results. We now have the thing to work with, but without any further analysis, we could have just left this tool out. So what we did was, we as a security team, we sat down and had a look at the results of the dependency checker. We did an initial analysis, which took a long time. It always takes a long time. You have to find out what exactly are the vulnerabilities, what exactly are the dependencies, where are we using it, are they used maybe by another dependency, that might also be the case, and are they false positives. So when we found out our 100 results there and categorized it, we set up a false positive suppression. So you can tell the dependency checker to ignore some of the dependencies because you marked them as a false positive. You basically feed it an XML file. So that is what we did. We fed it this XML file, and now the result list was a lot smaller. And we introduced a notification mechanism because we said a dependency check should not break the build. But it should notify us when something comes up, when a new high and critical vulnerability is introduced. So it now sends us an email with that, and then we step by step created tickets and prioritized the update of these dependencies. So basically, this was a lot of work after we integrated that tool. And this was without this work, the results of the dependency check would have really helped us not at all in this project. We of course also wanted to test our Docker and Kubernetes. We told you we use that for in our project as well. So just at the beginning, when we started out looking at these tools, we said, what could we use? What could we use to scan Docker and Kubernetes? And we looked at these tools. Maybe you heard of them, the Docker Bench for security and KubeBench. These are basically small little tools that check your environment, your Docker and your Kubernetes environment, against the CES benchmarks. The CES is the Center for Internet Security, and they release these benchmarks for about every system technology that you can imagine, operating systems, but also Docker and Kubernetes. And this is basically a set of rules, a checklist that tells you how to configure your system that it is secure. Even the CES itself says you will not be able to check everything on that list, otherwise your system will not be usable anymore. If even the CES says this, what should we do with the results? We let it run. We had then a huge list of findings of items that we did not check in our environments, and we also sat there and said, what should we do with that? How should we prioritize it? There are so many items here. We cannot just say there is a failure. We just change the configuration. This is more complicated than that. So also here, we from the security we went in and had a very deep look at the results. So again, we did an initial analysis. We compared the scan results from our dev and production environment, because they might be a little bit different, and in our case they were. So we had to think about which result we actually want to use for best practices. We had to do a prioritization and categorization of the results, which also was not trivial. And we then decided not to integrate these tools into our build pipeline at all, especially not as breaking. So we threw them out again. We now do these checks from time to time on our production environment, and it is really good as a manual analysis. But this tool would not have helped us in automated security scanning. So what I want to say with this is my next lessons learned. You hear a lot about tool integration, tools for security. Tools are awesome. Use a lot of tools, but tool integration alone will not solve your security issues. That is a fact. With all the tools, even with the best ones, you will need a process, a stable process afterwards on how to deal with the results. Who is responsible for the findings? What will you do with the findings? How will you react when there are high ones, critical ones, medium ones, informational ones? You always have to set up a process, and this is always not an easy task. So this is something you have to keep in mind. Do not think that the more tools you integrate, the better. Try to start out with a few tools where you have solid processes and then build up on that. That is also what we want to do with our Atlas principle, so that we not only just use all the tools we can get, but have these integrated and know how to work with the results. And also educate people, educate developers how to work with the results. Because often these are sent back to the developers and they will not know what to do with them. So this is a very important issue. Okay, moving on. The Agile project life. You all know how it is in Agile projects, in Agile teams. Nothing is staying as it was. Everything is changing all the time. Projects evolve, requirements evolve, and so it was with us as well. So when we started out in 2016, I have a little graph here. We were a small little project. We had, for example, 8 stories each sprint. Now we have 45 in 2019. When we started out, we had 17 users using our digital point of sales and backend. Now we have over 4,000. This is why this scale is logarithmical, by the way. Otherwise, I would not have been able to use this number here. We started out with 2 points of sales. Now we have 16 in different countries with different markets, different languages, different products. Our team, our developers, started in 2 locations, Munich and Hamburg, as I said. Now we are in 5 locations, one of this location being our offshore location in Vietnam, which also brought its own challenges with it. And our team was at the beginning, we were 3 developers, now we have 12. This does not include the business analysts, etc. So as you see, the project grew. It grew a lot. So also the focus in the daily security work did change a lot from 2016 to 2019. So when we started out, I was only talking to my security responsible on the project. It was really nice. We were talking together. We had a look at the issues. We had a look at the code. We had the time to initialize, to analyze everything in detail. We were talking in German because it was a European project. It was a German project. It was all really comfortable and really techy. So we were really able to have a look deeply into every issue. Now it looks quite different. So with our huge project and all the requirements that are coming in, now I'm not only talking to my responsible anymore because this would not scale, so I'm talking to the whole team. And I'm not only talking to the team, but I also talk to the customer and the stakeholders because they want to have status reports all the time on all these changing features, on the security. I have to have meetings a lot more with developers, with everyone. They just show me stuff and I cannot look at it in detail anymore because it would just be too much. And there is a lot of communication overhead also because our Vietnamese team is also included, which means we had time differences, etc. So yeah, daily work completely changed here. So the next lessons learned is that the bigger and more complex a project will get, the more high level the security work will be. And this is something that the person tasked with the security responsible role in the project must be aware of. Often these are technical people, and they want to stay technical people. Developers, for example, they want to still develop code. They don't want to have their whole daily work being communication, meetings, reports, etc. And this is something that should always be in the back of your head when choosing this role, when seeing how your project evolves, and maybe even you have to adapt. You have to choose someone else, maybe who is more adapt to that role. Just keep that in mind. It will not always be a technical role, being the security responsible in such a project. The next part is that the more stakeholders are involved, the more DevSec and Ops, all three parts, everything becomes politics. You have to be really pragmatic if a project is really big and you have a lot of stakeholders in there. Sometimes you will not be able to make all the security decisions that you really want to. If you want to really implement this security feature here, then maybe something else will take priority over that. You will not be able to change that. And this is more and more the case when there are more people having a say in that. Also something to keep in mind. Pragmatism is really important when dealing with security. Security should not be an end in itself. It should always be exactly what the project needs and not too much just because of the sake of security. When you start out, especially when it is a more high-level task now, you might want to use standards. You might want to use strategies that are out on the web and concepts that have been evolving now over the time. Like, for example, the OWASP ASVS, and there are a lot of other standards that you could use when introducing security. I do not say they're a bad thing. They're actually a really good thing, and you should know them, and you should know what people do in terms of security, in terms of the standards, how they evolve. But they also hold the danger of getting lost in them. This is something we experienced. We wanted to do it right from the beginning, really right. We wanted to be to document everything. We wanted to hold ourselves to certain standards of the industry, and then we saw that the team got way ahead of us. While we were thinking about how to integrate this concept, how to integrate this standards, 3 sprints have passed and new features have been implemented that we were not able to take a look at. So do not lose yourself in in these kind of concepts, in theoretical work, get your hands dirty, do practical work. It is something that you need to do in an agile team. And the last of my lessons learned, and the most important one, I think, is that the whole DevSecOps concept and shift left in general only works with team awareness and with the cooperation of the whole team in the area of security. As I said in the beginning, DevSecOps does not mean that someone is introduced in the project and they have the responsibility for security and everyone else can lean back and enjoy. But everyone should feel responsible for security. Everyone should be involved into decisions, and everyone should be educated. Do not think like security is something floating over the heads of everyone else, and they should not be concerned with that. But it is the other way around. The whole team must be introduced into security. It must be the motivation of the team to build secure software. Everyone, from the developer to the tester, to the business analyst, they should think about how to make our software secure. This is something we did not emphasize on at the beginning, but we did later on, and we saw the change. We saw the change in the team. We saw the change in the work. We saw how it really helped us. We saw that business analysts came to us and told us, we were talking with the customer about this feature, but we think that might introduce a security problem. What do you think about it? And this is something that should be encouraged. Everyone should think about security. So this is really, really important. So to sum up, what is the moral of the story here? Is DevSecOps practical? That is the question I started out with. So, yeah, maybe you can already guess the answer. I say yes, of course, but there is always a but. What we do need here is, as we said, to sum up, flexibility in terms of how your work is done and in terms of high level, etc. You need pragmatism when it comes to security. Do the right things, but do only them. You need solid processes, tool support, but not only tool support, and the cooperation of the whole team in your project. That now sounds like quite a challenge, and for some, we heard that they said this is not something that we can do. So we will not even start with that. And that is my last message, and the important one. Not having DevSecOps is no solution either. So do not shy back from this challenge, but take it on. Even small steps are making a huge difference in terms of security. And there is a lot of change going on in the community right now. There are more tools coming out, better tools. There are people are talking more and more about security, and we should all work together to make it that we will not even think about it, that security will become a natural part of each DevOps team. And I hope that these lessons learned and these best practices, the experience I shared with you today will help you also make that step and introduce a DevSecOps process into your team, into your company, and take on this challenge. Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions?